In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to America in Black and White, Season 3, Episode 155. I'm your host, Charles King, and tonight we're joined by a man whose mission is to help people design a life they love and a plan to fund it. Jerry Jones, a certified financial planner and advisor at IRC Wealth, brings not only expertise but lived perspective. Growing up in Warner Robins, Georgia, Jerry saw the wealth divide up close. A father who rose from a two-bedroom home with 9 kids to provide stability and friends split between middle and lower income households. That experience shaped his conviction that access and environment matter just as much as ambition. Jerry began his journey studying pre pharmacy at Georgia Southern University, earning a BS in chemistry with a finance minor. But he soon realized freedom didn't require doctor before his name. He immersed himself in the study of money, investing, and behavior, earning the CFP designation and 4 other advanced credentials. After years serving ultra wealthy clients on a top advisory team, Jared chose a new path, one focused on educational and empowering people who look like him and may not have grown up with money lessons at home. Today, he specializes in helping creative agency owners plan retirements and transitions while championing practical financial literacy for all. Beyond his career, Jerry is a devoted husband of 6 years, father of 2 sons, a teacher to elementary kids at his church, and a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha. Off the clock, you'll find him over a chessboard or on a basketball court. Tonight, we'll explore his life story, his career as a certified financial planner, and his work as a financial advisor dedicated to empowerment and legacy. Let's welcome Jerry Jones to America in Black and White.
Here, man.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I am doing just excellent. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Very glad to be here.
Is there anything you'd like to let our audience know before we get into the show?
Man, that was it. Thank you so much for the intro. I got to take you on tour with me. I appreciate that, man. I just have a passion for financial planning, for wealth building, and I really like that you combine your professional expertise with the Black community, because I think as people who we experience some level of success, we're called to do more with that. So thanks so much for letting me be a part of it.
Yes, sir. So what we're going to start first with is I want to just so our audience can know a little bit more about Jerry and how you got to be where you are. I want to start with your life story and background. And can you tell us about growing up in Warner Robins, Georgia?
Man, so growing up, I had a love-hate relationship with Warner Robins because I thought at the time the city was boring. Now, little did I know there was much more boring than Warner Robins, but I thought it was boring at the time. But I had a phenomenal upbringing. My dad is one of the most influential people in my life. He's a pastor still to this day. Now we grew up, got that strict Southern Baptist pastor strictness and discipline, but I mean, hey, I'll take it now. I ended up fine. And then my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she was super nurturing, and she would actually let us do stuff that we knew if we asked our dad we couldn't do.
Right.
And I grew up with a twin brother and a younger brother, extremely close with them to this day. I live in Atlanta now, and both of my brothers live here as well. But it was good. It was a really good upbringing. And you said in your intro that my dad came from a really poor upbringing. It was 10 of them in the house and 2 bedrooms, and the parents got the 1 bedroom by themselves. So he went from that and went to college and gave us a really good upbringing where we didn't have any lack, we didn't have any want. Whenever we came home from school, we were encouraged to do our homework. We had help with our homework. So I would say it was really picture perfect upbringing from both sides of the family and even the environment that we were in. I grew up in the suburbs, and by the time we got to high school, I grew a real appreciation for that, because in high school, I went to a school, didn't really know it was a bad school on paper at the time, but probably about 50% of the school was Black, probably about 40% of it was white, and then 10% other. And most of the Black students there were from the hood. Most of the white students were from the suburbs. And I remember one day, one of my best friends, really good on the football team, but couldn't get his grades right. And I go home and I'm telling my dad, man, why can't he just get his grades right? School is easy, because it came easy to me. But he points out, well, you grew up, you have both parents at home. If you have a fresh meal, as soon as you walk through the door, I'm home by 5:30. If you have a bad day at school, it's all right. You have somebody here to help you. Whereas your friend, if they come home from school, the dad's definitely not there. The mom's probably not there. Fend for yourself with food. The moms don't know where they're at. They don't have help with their work. They may have a bad day at school and have an even worse day at home. So that really shaped me, and that grew an appreciation and also a call for stewardship. So I had a really blessed upbringing, so I need to be a good steward of that upbringing and make the most of it, out of respect for myself and out of respect for the people who poured into me. And then on top of that, since I have my upbringing and it helped me to get to where I am in life, I need to be able to I can't give someone a good upbringing besides my kids, but mentor some people, pull some people out of those bad environments, and give someone that good male figure, that good family, that good loving environment that I have.
Wow. Paying it forward is always great. But when we have young people like yourself, young future leaders of this world, this is what we all need to hear and learn. And I appreciate you for doing that, because a lot of people will appreciate that. And I guess maybe from just timing and just cultural understandings and so forth, eventually I'm sure that they're going to tell you that same thing.
Absolutely.
So, how did your father's journey inspire your own?
Man. So look, I had to decipher fact from fiction with my dad, because let him tell it, man. He grew up in wasn't no roof overhead, wasn't no house, wasn't no carpet on the floor. My dad told me from the pulpit, no less. He said, man, we grew up, we were so poor, we got gun holsters for Christmas, and we had to wear them as sandals in the summertime. But I think 2 things really came from that. One is, despite the lack that they had, they grew up with a lot of love in their house. And my dad told me he didn't really understand that he was poor really until close to when he moved away from college. And he knows now that they were really impoverished, but it was just so much love. It was community. And I really think that's why all 8 of my aunts and uncles were really successful in their own rights, even though they all came from that same background. But then 2 is, I just grew an appreciation for how my dad made sure that my upbringing was better than his, from a money standpoint, but also just from a leadership standpoint, because he didn't have a dad growing up. his parents got separated when he was really young. So he grew up no dad most of the time. So not only was it financially better, my upbringing, but I had both parents there. And so now that inspires me that I want to improve on the upbringing that I had. So maybe I cut out some of the pastor craziness with my kids, but really inspired me to do the same thing for my kids. I had a great upbringing, but how can I make theirs even better?
Right. So, what did you learn from seeing the wealth divide in your community?
Man, I truly believe, I don't think everyone shares this belief, but I truly believe that environment has probably 80% to do with where you are in life. I just saw some experiences in some environments where it's like, man, okay, they didn't make it out of that, but I don't think anybody could. One of the most eye-opening things for me is I had a lot of friends who were involved in gangs. And I was in high school and I kind of realized, man, all these guys, they're joining gangs when they're 10, right? Who's making good decisions when they're 10? And they're in these environments where, okay, if you're in a gang, you're probably in danger. If you're not in a gang, you're probably in danger. So you might as well join one. So to me, it wasn't a hard choice not to join a gang, but I didn't grow up in that same environment, right? That wasn't a big decision. That wasn't any smartness or wisdom on my part. I just wasn't in that environment. And same thing with graduating from high school. For me, that was a given. Graduating high school was nothing. I had zero issues. It was not even a thought. Going to college wasn't even a thought. But for a lot of people with, your first generation, you don't have a way to pay for all the schools if you don't get certain student aid. That's not a given. So to me, as good as I did in school, as smart as I was in school, it's not like I worked extremely hard or just had super pulled myself up by the bootstraps per se to get to where I am. And that comes with a sense of responsibility. So now I'm responsible to make the most of that because everyone wasn't blessed with that. But I mean, even if you are in those negative situations, there's someone who's in a worse situation. So on the flip side, you can always make the most of what you have. But I think a lot of the poverty we see, the violence that we see, there's personal responsibility in that. But if you put someone in these bad situations, most people are going to turn out the same way. If you put people in these good situations, most people are going to turn out the same way within a reasonable margin of error.
So, now you mentioned something that was, I think, is really, really profound when you mentioned environment.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, what are some of the things about your environment that helped shape you to make more informed decisions or better decisions as you were growing up?
Man, it's interesting. I think a lot of what makes a good environment is not what you hear from your parents or what you hear from the influence, but what you see happening. So with my parents, I saw, well, for one, I'll even move away from my parents, but my dad was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, and for a long time, all of my friends who had dads in their lives, their dads were members of Alpha Phi Alpha. So going to my dad with fraternity meetings or whenever his fraternity, and I'm a member myself now, but whenever his fraternity had events, I'm seeing all these men who are active in their children's lives. So for me being in my kid's life, that was a foregone conclusion. I couldn't not do that. With my dad, I didn't see him studying per se, but he was a pastor. So at 4:00 in the morning, if I happened to wake up, I was going to see him reading the Bible and with his little binder and preparing notes. So he was doing some studying, and that didn't really sink in for me all of all of growing up. But seeing him study, that actually had an impact on me, all the way down to how my dad communicated with my mom. So with them, they would argue in front of me, but there was nothing ever any toxic about it. There was no voice raising. There was definitely no hitting or anything elevated like that. And so for me, growing up, relationships, how I deal with people in my life, my wife, there was none of that that toxicity. He never told me, hey, you don't need to yell, but it just was ingrained into me. So I think you can go down almost every single area of life, and I think there is some way that environment influences that. But I think those are just some of the first ones off the top of my head.
Okay. How did your early environment shape your views on money?
It is interesting. So that was one of the things that probably a lot of my views on money changed after I left the house. But before that wasn't a thing that we had conversations about. As a matter of fact, when I was graduating high school and went to college, I ended up choosing pre-pharmacy as my major because the people who had the nice houses, those were the doctors or attorneys, but mostly the doctors. So I thought in order to be rich, in order to make six figures, I needed to have a doctor in front of my name. I don't know what doctors do what. I didn't really know at that time. But I thought pharmacy was pretty cool. I'll learn about drugs and that's a doctor. So that's what I chose. I did pretty good in chemistry class, the one chemistry class I had. So I just chose that. So I did go in there thinking, okay, you have to have a doctor in front of your name if you want to be really, really successful. Now that's something that changed over the course of being in college and in my career. But that was one thing. And then I think that there is this level of distrust that Black people as a whole have with financial institutions. I think a lot of it is really well warranted. But if you fast forward to I'm past high school, past college, and I'm like 5, 10 years into my career, I'm seeing that a lot of the most successful clients that I have, the clients who got started early, who have big net worth, and most of these are white clients, their parents had financial advisors. Their parents were talking to them about investing. Their parents were talking to them about credit. And that's something that I didn't have growing up. And I don't blame my dad didn't have that. We didn't have assets to think about investing. But there's also this distrust, which I think a lot of times is warranted, of these big major institutions because they're influenced by politics, they're influenced by big business, and the effect of that is we grow up with less financial education, financial literacy than our white counterparts.
So, what role did ambition play in your childhood dreams?
Mm. Man, I think a big thing was I knew I wasn't athletic enough to to be a professional athlete. So, I knew pretty early on I was going to have to get it another way. But it's interesting, man. I did really, really good in school growing up, but I didn't try the hardest in high school. I just kind of coasted to good grades and then college. And I knew I wanted to be successful, but I had an issue because whenever I took those personality tests and they would say, how hard do you work? I'm like, a 3. How much does doing hard work excite you? A 1. What's your favorite subject? PE. So I was getting, janitor and and professional mover. I had that ambition, but I didn't know the direction. So that was one of the big things. I just picked something that was ambitious. I thought, okay, I can just coast by based on I'm able to do really, really good at school. I can memorize pretty good. I can take tests pretty good. So it was a lot of coasting and there was a lot of ambition, but I really think that it's like having your foot just on the gas pedal, no GPS, no direction, just foot on the gas pedal, doing stuff. It manifests in a bunch of different ways, but I didn't have that passion yet. I think that was a missing piece up until college. And I can dive into that unless you have a follow-up question.
Well, no, but I will say, with you being part ways in and a lot of ways out. So, what got you to that point where you actually figured out and realized that there needed to be a change?
So one of the best things that happened, this is more environment, but when I went to college, that's the really big shift for me, getting out from under my parents, because as good as they were, I just needed to be on my own and be my own person. It sounds cliche, but that's what needed to happen. But really early on in college, I got connected with some really good group of guys. So my friend, I'm just shouting out my name, my friend Joseph Hines, one of the most ambitious guys I've ever met, probably the most successful person of his age group, of our age group, who I know personally. But he was really big into personal development. And I'd gotten a little bit into personal development in high school, but he was reading Think and Grow Rich, positive mental attitude, some law of attraction stuff, things like that. And I didn't know anybody in high school I was familiar with those books, but I didn't know anybody who was reading similar things to that. So he was really inspirational to me. And I had another best friend, De'Aaron Morrison. He was really big into activism, and then he was extremely involved on campus. He was already on student government before I even knew what a student government was. He was on student government back at his high school, and he really challenged me to, instead of just coasting and getting by on grades. And in high school, I was in some extracurriculars, but I was picking extracurricular based on what was the field trips, and who had food after school. So he helped me get involved in college, and that helped me explore some passions. And from there, I started finding out a little bit of things that I'm actually good at. I knew I wasn't good at sports. I was pretty good at school, but you can't be a professional student. Well, I guess you can, but you probably shouldn't be a professional student your whole life. But I'm getting involved with student government now. I joined my fraternity my sophomore year, and I'm president and vice president of the fraternity, and I see I'm pretty good at leadership. So that's where everything starts to coalesce, and you have that ambition, but now it has some drive to it. But I would put that 100% on the people who I was around. And that's two guys who I named, but my entire friend group were ambitious guys who are all extremely successful now, all Black men who are extremely successful now, as far as my really close inner circle.
Mm. So tell us a little, if you can give us a little bit more of the meat and potatoes as to why did you decide to initially pursue pre-pharmacy?
Man, it's gonna sound bad because it was just, they made money. I looked up how much they make per year. They come out making six figures, and I was decent at chemistry. Now I will say this is, look, I don't want to get your show demonetized or anything, but I was also interested, not in partaking, but just researching drugs. I like, and I'm talking about illicit drugs. I would, in my free time, just search, okay, how does amphetamine affect the brain? How does this affect the brain? And so I did have an interest in that, and it's related to, your I don't want to say too many words, but your medicines, some of your heavier, severe medicines. And so I did have an interest in that. But honestly, I only took one chemistry class. I think they need to stop letting 18-year-olds decide what they want to do for the rest of their life, because I didn't know what being a pharmacist was actually like until I shadowed one in sophomore year. And now you see I'm a financial advisor.
Well, you know something, as you mentioned it, I mean, that's more than just an interesting part, because what you was so intrigued about of what pharmacists need to know. Because if your doctor prescribed you something that they know if you're taking something else and it's going to affect this, they will tell you, don't need to take this. You need to take this back to your doctor. I wouldn't recommend you taking that. So I mean, that's an understood thing, and that's actually pretty cool. So go ahead.
I was gonna say, and Charles, you know what? If that was, so I ended up shadowing a guy my sophomore year, and if I saw more of that, maybe I'll be a pharmacist. But I will tell you, 99% of the job, it was sitting behind there counting pills and figuring out insurance. It was boring, man. I know some people are wired for that, but man, I'm looking at my clock. It was bad. I worked at McDonald's a little bit in high school, and that was the longest hours of the day. I think that pharmacy might have been rougher than when I worked at McDonald's back in high school. It was rough. It was boring.
So what made you the pivot from chemistry to finance? Because what intrigued you so that you went to that area?
So it was a slow development, and everything fell into place right when it should have. But it really started as an extension of the personal development that I was doing. So I was reading personal development books, and then a part of that, you read your Think and Grow Rich, and then I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. I don't really condone most of the stuff in that book, but I think that's a really good book for getting people to have the mindset of maybe there's more to this money game. And so that was my first introduction into the finance world and the personal finance world. And that kind of gave me a hint that, okay, maybe you don't have to have a doctor in front of your name in order to grow wealth and have freedom and live the lifestyle that you want to live. And then I read some more books, and the one thing that was really pivotal for me is, and I skipped a part. After I shadowed that pharmacist that one day, I knew I wasn't going to be a pharmacist. So it was, I picked up a minor based on, I was reading some of those books in finance. And then I stumbled upon a blog post. And it's a blog called Mr. Money Mustache. He was really popular in the like finance bro world back in the mid 2010s. But he had an article, and essentially it said that if you save half of your paycheck, every single paycheck, invest it, if you just sit there and keep doing that and compound it, you can retire in 20 years. And I happen to be in this finance class where it taught you this thing called time value money. And time value money essentially says $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow, or more than $1 in a year, more than $1 2 years. And it's also that principle of compounding, right? If you double $1, it turns to 2, you double $1 again, it turns to 4, 8, so on and so forth. And then it builds not linearly, but exponentially. And so that really got my mind open. I really dug even deeper into the whole personal finance world. And so I had this finance minor, this chemistry major, and the reason I didn't change my major all in was because I knew I had the Hope Scholarship and I needed to get out of there in 4 years. So I'm counting my money, counting my credit hours. I knew I didn't have enough money to change my major and be here for an extra year. But from there, I knew I wanted to do personal finance, but my thing was just breaking into the finance industry. Okay. And so one of my other friends, Christopher Ogletree, he's a financial advisor, amazing guy. We worked together for probably about 7 years and some change. But we're skipping to my senior year, but he was at what is it called? Those job fairs that you have at the colleges. And he already had this offer on the table to do management at, I think, a retail store. And it was a good paying job. And he comes back and says, man, there's this company called Northwestern Mutual. I don't know what they do, but it just feels right. And I was familiar with it because I was interested in getting a financial advisor. So I said, okay, they do insurance, financial planning, that sort of thing. And then he gets into the internship there. They offer an internship where you do financial advising for a summer. And if you get X amount of clients, they'll give you a full-time contract. So he does it. He tells me is absolute hell. It is a grind. It is rough, but he does it successfully. And so I'm saying, hey, I'm trying to get in finance. You said it's a grind. Look, I don't have any other options here. I have a chemistry major. I'm not working in a chemistry lab. I'm not going to pharmacy school, doctor school. And he introduces me to the recruiter there, and they bring me on as a intern there and say, hey, get 10 clients. We'll give you a full contract. And I did it.
Wow. So how did your college years influence your career path?
Man, a lot. So for one, I just found out about finance through colleges. It started with the friend group that I was in, doing the personal development, and then that led to picking up a finance minor where I learned even more. The class where I learned about time value money, compound interest, that was extremely pivotal. And then the most influential, I don't want to short somebody. I had a few influential teachers, but the most influential teacher to me being in finance now, it was a guy. He was a Yale graduate. I think it was Harvard and Yale. I think he got like Harvard for a master's or something, but he had a doctorate in biochemical engineering from Yale. He tries to cure cancer. He realized he can't cure it, and he decides to just leave it alone, start investing, and become an investment professor. So by the time I meet him, this guy is 60 or 70, and he would start the class. He was the guy, you ever have those teachers who they clearly don't need the money, so they just do what they want to do? He was one of those guys. And so for most of college, they got their books and they're teaching from the books, and most of college professors can't teach anyway. They're just there for research, especially if you're at a research college. But this guy, he was there to teach. And so he would start out the class every single day, and he would say, I'll just throw out a topic. He'll say, today we're going to learn about stock options. Now, once you are graduated and you have your fancy job and your boss says, hey, I need a report tomorrow on option, what are you going to do? Are you going to open up a textbook that you got from college? No, you're going to get on Google and Google what is an option. And he would literally go on Google what is an option. He said, then you're going to scroll down, find you something that looks credible. He'd click an article off of Google, and he would teach the whole lesson from Google.
Oh, wow.
So everything he taught me, it really stayed with me because it taught me how to think about investing. And it just taught me how to think and problem solve. That really equipped me with, when I'm 1, 2, 3 years in the business, I don't know every single question that my client asked me, but I was quick to hit him with, hey, I don't have the answer right now, but I'll get you an answer by 5 o'clock tomorrow. And I'm going on Google, doing some research and giving them a good answer. Or I have other advisors who I know, and I'll ask them. But it taught me how to think about finance too. And to this day, I might not know the answer to everything, but I know how to get the answer to pretty much everything. So that really stuck with me. And then even with, I guess, my internship that I had with Northwestern Mutual, that was a little bit, I guess I technically was still in school, but that was post-college per se, but it still felt like I was in college because it was an internship. But that was the first time ever being around actual money. And part of it was because this was my first time living in Atlanta. But seeing what wealth looks like, seeing what Black wealth looks like, that gave me something to aspire to, and also just showed me the possibilities here that we have in Atlanta and period.
So who were your mentors or role models growing up?
Growing up?
Yes.
Biggest one by far was my dad, by far. He was just who I aspired to be as a man. He was, so when you say pastor, people might have different perceptions of what that means. And unfortunately, some people, when they think pastor, they think hypocrites. My dad was the opposite of that. My dad is a guy who, he would go to the hood, or he could go to a hookah bar, and people might stop smoking just because my dad walks in, because he was a person who, he wasn't judgmental, but his actions lined up with exactly what he preached. He was completely congruent. And he had charisma, and he had this level of tact to him where he wasn't abrasive or anything, but he also didn't shy away from confrontation. He didn't shy away from us questioning him and confrontation with us. So I will say my dad was extremely strict, but I'm getting a little off topic, but he was extremely strict. But the one thing I will say that really helped me is, if you disagree with something that he said, he would let you get in like 2 good lines. So he wasn't going to let you go back and forth all day, but he would let you make your point. Now, he probably wasn't going to change his mind anyways, but I think that really helped me. And if he says do this, he would let you question him. And he might give you an answer, he might not, but he wouldn't get offended because you question him. And that helped me as a leader, being able to be assertive. That really helped me throughout life, through college and current day. But I'll say he was definitely the most influential. It wasn't even far. And then there were some guys in his fraternity that were really cool and great dads. I ended up being friends with their sons because a lot of them had sons my age too. But dad by far. Another reason that I think college was good for me is because once I got to college, I got other mentors. And one of my mentors, I had a direct mentor named John Wosu. Amazing guy. He is a counselor. I believe he still works in the schools, but I think he's definitely a counselor, and I believe he works in middle schools. But he was a graduate student at the time. He was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha at the time. Well, still is. But he was extremely involved in the school. He was a guy who, he was charismatic, popular on school, but still got his work done. And then every time you talk to him, the man was powerful. He definitely should have been a counselor, because regardless of the situation, we could be going out to the clubs, to the bars, we having a conversation. We might be getting counseled. We don't even know it yet, right there by the dance floor. But he just, challenged your way of thinking. Excellence. He was really involved in school. And then there was a bunch of other mentors too. Most of them were alphas as well, who were graduates at the time. And then they were just involved with student government, involved with their particular organizations that were related to their majors. The African Student Association, Caribbean Student Association. They were just the leaders on campus. So that showed me how to, that was my good environment from more of a peer perspective and people I looked up from a more peer perspective, as opposed to, my dad, who's 30 years older than me, or his friends who are 30 years older than me.
So how has your upbringing influenced the way you advise your clients today?
I think the biggest thing is empathy. Unfortunately, man, a lot of financial advisors, a part of why people are scared to talk to a financial advisor is because people just fear that we're going to judge them. And I did know this even going into the industry, but I was just kind of shocked with how many people lack empathy. It would be people who went through a lot of hardships, a lot of trauma that end up causing money trauma. And the advisor would, just the things that they would say after the meetings, and then some things would just slip out in meetings where it was just, there's no empathy for this person who may not have as good of a upbringing as you do, who might not have the financial knowledge as you do. And they already probably feel bad talking to you, right? Debt, you say a person coming in the meeting and saying they have debt, that doesn't scare me. A person saying that they have bad money habits, that doesn't scare me. But a lot of people, a lot of advisors will judge them for that. So I have empathy for people who they're coming with lower level of financial knowledge, people who have made financial mistakes, people who are starting late. None of that bothers me. My thing is, at least you're talking to an advisor now, right? And let's do something about that now. And then another thing is, I think for Black advisors, we need to really be, it takes a lot of empathy for Black advisors. I will say that, because it is significantly harder to work with Black clientele than white clientele. And it's for a lot of the reasons that I just explained. But I'll just paint the picture like this. If you're meeting with a white professional, 9 times out of 10, they know they need a financial advisor. Right now, it might not be you, but they know they need a financial advisor. They know they need to save for retirement. They know they need to be doing those things. They know they need life insurance. Now, if you talk with a Black professional, they can even be, the most successful business owner, all those things. They might have a distrust of just financial institutions in general. Black people, we love us some real estate. It don't matter if you like real estate or not, but we love us some real estate. So you have to speak to that. They might not have as good of a head start. They probably won't have as good as a head start as your typical person who isn't a Black professional. Whereas 9 times out of 10, if I'm meeting with someone Black, they had to get through college debt, or they're paying off college debt now. They weren't really giving money for their first house. And I'm not saying this is everybody, but the chance of, if you're sitting down with a white prospective client, the chance of they're graduating because their parents paid their way through school, they might have got some help with their first house. We're starting behind. So all those things make it, like, I wouldn't even say twice as hard. I'd probably say about 3 or 4 times as hard to work with our Black clients than white clients. Hate to admit that, but it is what it is. And I think a lot of Black advisors, if I'm mentoring a Black advisor, I think a lot of people get frustrated with that, because we feel, hey, I'm here trying to help. I'm trying to make change in the community. I'm trying to build generational wealth. But you even have to have empathy for that, right? Because, we see it as, all right, well, I grew up with the same upbringing as you did, and I'm investing my money. But it's not that simple, right? There's probably somebody in your life that led you to this path where you're financially literate, you care about wealth building. But for other people, they might not have been there yet. And hopefully our job is, maybe we can be that person for them. So the empathy by far is the biggest thing.
So let's transition over to your career as a certified financial planner, because I think from that foundational perspective that you just gave us, it puts you on really solid ground. And when I say that, it's because in knowing finance myself, you know, a lot of times, a lot of people um, that may seek, as you mentioned earlier, they may seek to do a profession, but when they get into that profession, then it's like, no, I really don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found about a lot of people that go onto the finance side that are there and stay there, it's because due diligence is there, ethics is there, and also that can do and being meticulous about everything that you do is already
Mm-hmm.
there. So, you know, so that means that you are ready to serve people. And pretty much what I'm saying to the audience as well as we're speaking now is that I clearly believe that you are definitely going to be one of those people that they need to be checking with when we complete this show.
I appreciate that.
So, what inspired you to pursue the CFP designation?
Man, so excuse me, I'm recovering from a sickness. So sorry about that, brother. So I knew as soon as I got into the profession that I wanted to build a level of expertise. I wanted to be really, really good at being a financial advisor. I wanted to have, I wanted to be what I call unstoppable. There wasn't a question you could ask me about finance that I couldn't answer. Now the challenge with that is I had a chemistry background and a finance minor, so I felt like I was playing behind the eight ball when I started in the career. So as soon as I got into the career, any kind of test, any kind of designations that I could get my hands on, I was doing it. So you have your series licensing where you can do, you know, trade mutual funds and trade certain stocks. And after I get all the licensing and the just the bare minimum, you need this in order to work in the field stuff. The CFP was the next thing. The CFP certified financial planner, that's the most prestigious designation in the financial planning space. So it was really important to me. So I ended up being the first Black advisor in my office. It was an office of, at any given time, probably about 120 advisors there. And I was the first Black advisor to get the CFP there. But that was, you know, that's just step one. After that, I wanted to get more and more designations, build more expertise. And it's more than just getting the designations. It's also in your free time, are you studying finance? Are you studying the intricacies of finance? Because CFP, it is a designation where it tells you kind of everything about the financial planning space. It tells you a little bit about insurance. It tells you a little bit about investing. It tells you a little bit about retirement plans. But after that, it's still up to you to dive deeper. So with me, I work with retirees or people who are about to retire a lot. So one of the big things that I wanted to get was, it's called the Retirement Income Certified Professional. So it's a person who specializes in retirement income. So if you build up a big nest egg of money, how do you take that and turn it into income, right? You can't live off just a big nest egg. How do you turn that to income? So I'm driven by a desire to have expertise in the field. I want to be one of the best financial advisors ever. And, you know, from having the biggest practice perspective, that's fine. But from a knowledge base, I would love to, and from an impact perspective, I would love to be the best, an expert, a master at financial advising.
So, can you explain what being a certified financial planner means?
Yeah, so essentially it means you studied real hard, you took a bunch of tests, and you have knowledge, you have expertise in financial planning as a practice. So from the CFP, the CFP is done by the CFP board, the Certified Financial Planner. It's regulated by the CFP board, and they want to make sure that you know everything that might affect someone's financial life. So that's why they have sections in there for things like health insurance. So if someone comes and they have a question related to finance, that a certified financial planning professional can answer that question. So it is, I actually got mine pretty fast, but on average, it typically takes people about 2 years to complete all the coursework and the test to do it. and you also have to have a certain amount of experience of actually being in the field doing financial planning.
Mm. And so, when now that you are in the field, can you tell us how do you differentiate between your clients and how you actually talk to them and the things that you offer them? How do you differentiate and make that work?
That's funny. So I think a part of expertise is at some point, if you really want to be an expert, you're going to have to specialize. So when I first started, I was talking to everybody. Most of my clients were Black, but I was talking to everybody on the field. People who had a little bit of money, people who had a lot of bit of money, and so because you're talking to this huge range of people, you have to diagnose. You have to see what the person's, and in finance it might not be an issue, but what are the person's goals? What are their objectives? So it's a lot of time spent on the front end getting to know someone. People are kind of shocked that a lot of times when you talk with a financial advisor, you may be telling them things that you've never said out loud. You might be saying values that you've never really articulated before, goals, dreams, fears that you never talked about before. But it's really important because money is just a tool. You really have to get behind the why of that tool. So if a person is coming to me and they're just getting started, you have to get to the why. They may say, okay, I want financial freedom one day. All right, so great, that's a start. So now what are the steps that it takes to get to financial freedom, right? And now I work with mostly retirees. Their thing may be, hey, I want peace when I go to sleep, right? I don't want to have to turn on Fox News and worry if Fox News, I don't know why I chose that one. CNBC. Fox News is crazy. I don't want to have to turn on. See, I had a diverse clientele. So see a CNBC and see that the stock market is doing bad and have to worry about that. So now it may be, all right, now I changed gears. Now I'm focused on educating. Okay, well, how do we put a plan in place where you don't have to be worried about the stock market? And how do we give you this sense of security? But at the end of the day, money is just a tool there. And it's really about what's driving the plan. Why is the person sitting in front of you? What do they want? What do they fear?
So, as you're looking into this camera right now and you're doing this show, tell this audience why they should seek you out as their financial planner.
Well, I wouldn't say that everybody should seek me out as their financial planner. I think that what everyone should do is get really, really intentional about what they want, right? What do you want in life? Most people don't ever think about it. They just coast through life, get through life. But what do you want? Do you want to provide a life for your kids? Do you want to have a certain type of lifestyle? What do you actually want? Right. And chances are that finance is part of that goal. Now, if your goal is to, hey, one day I want to be able to not work anymore. By the time I'm 60, I don't want to work. By the time I'm 50, I don't want to work. If that's part of your goal, hey, it might be helpful to talk to a financial advisor, but you might not need to. I think one of the tricky parts is if you tell people that they need a financial advisor, they have to have a financial advisor. I work mostly with retirees, right? So with a 25-year-old, hey, if you're watching this show, call me. I will talk with you. I'll have a conversation with you, because you were a viewer of this show. But typically, in my day-to-day, I'm not really working with 25-year-olds, right? So I can't tell. And a lot of financial advisors are like that. So it's kind of hard to tell someone, hey, go pay $10,000 to go speak with a financial advisor and your net worth is $2,000. I'm not saying that's my price, but that everybody doesn't have the capacity to talk to a financial advisor. But I think everybody should be taking steps to increase their financial literacy and to improve their financial circumstances, right? I think on the most basic level, look, make sure you know what's going into and out of your account, right? A lot of people don't know how much, you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't know how much money they make, right? And much more people don't know how much they spend on a monthly basis. I'm not saying go budget, but hey, go download one of these apps. I use an app called Moneyline. Download one of these apps, link all your credit cards. And look, I ain't telling you to change anything, but at the end of the month, just check, see how much money you spent that week. Maybe go look at the categories and hey, you might say, oh, I didn't know I was spending $2,000 on food, and you can change that. So that's on the most basic level. And then find someone who can teach you a little bit about investing. Like I say, any viewer of this show, you can reach out to me and I'll point you in that right direction or get you started. All right, but learn a little bit about investing. If you're just getting started and you're starting with $0, you might not need to go talk to a financial advisor. You may can just get on, Bogleheads or something of that nature, get in a good group and learn a little bit about index fund investing, or a little bit about how to invest your 401k. Right. But then if you want to look for a financial advisor, I would go based on recommendations. So who do you trust? Right. If you see someone talking on, a podcast, YouTube, and they seem to have a heart for the industry, they're putting out good information out, then that might be a great person to reach out to. Hypothetically, somebody wasn't watching this show, they don't follow financial advisors, they don't know who to go to. Just ask around, see if your friends have any financial advisors who they recommend, because it's really a trust business. But I think financial advisors, just like money, are a tool, right? Some of them can be expensive tools. So I can't just say everyone wholesale should be working with a financial advisor. And I know that's different than most people in the industry, but that's the God's honest truth.
There's nothing wrong with being ethically true and telling that truth, because that makes more sense than anything.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of folk are quickly pouncing on people and convincing them to go out and do just what you said. And there's so many people in our community that have been preyed upon this actually happened to, and it's caused them a lot of hardship and not a lot of good at all, because they couldn't afford it.
Absolutely.
So, can you tell us, how did earning multiple advanced credentials shape your expertise?
That's an interesting one. I think the advanced credentials, they more just communicate that you care about finance, that you care about the industry, that you are a learner. I will say I've learned significantly more by doing than by studying. And that's from somebody with 5 different designations. But I think it communicates to other people. So the people who I've worked with, my business partners in the past, it communicated to them that, hey, this guy, Jerry, is really serious about the industry. And then for clients, I'm gonna be honest, I have all my credentials in my email signature. None of my clients know what any of that stuff means. They know what the CFP means, and that's about it. They're just like, okay, Jerry has a bunch of credentials. That must mean something. But it's book knowledge, but you have to really learn the applied knowledge, because you can learn everything, all the right things to do with finance. But the crux of it is that person who's in front of you. How do you understand their emotions? How do you understand their goals, their desires? And then how do you get them to take action that moves them towards their goals, right? A part of that is education. So how do I meet a person where they are and educate on that? Part of that is knowing when it's too much education, right? At a certain point, you don't need more knowledge. You just need to do something, right? I can tell you all the things in the world, but if you're not investing any money, we didn't really go anywhere. You can have all the financial advising, all the investment knowledge in the world, but if you don't actually put it into practice, it doesn't do anything. So I would say it was helpful. I learned a lot. I learned significantly more from the actual experience and working with people, putting plans together, people asking questions, that type of part of the business.
So, in the beginning, tell us, what was it like working with the ultra wealthy clients in your early?
So that actually came through probably about the middle part of my career. So from like 5 to 8. It was really interesting. So for the beginning part of my year, I worked with mostly Black clients. And then from year like 2 to 5, it was really diverse: Black clients, white clients, Indian clients, Asian clients, the whole spectrum. And then from probably about 6 to 8, I was working with, or probably about 7 to 9, I was working with really wealthy clients. And it was interesting. It was a really fruitful experience. I was making a difference. I got to learn. I got to work on problems that challenged my mind. And one of the interesting parts is, one, people, no matter how much money you have, people have money worries. So there's people who they don't have to worry about money or worry about running out of money a day in their life. who are, one, still nervous about money, stressed out about money, and then two, who are not happy. So those were the two biggest takeaways. So one, that making more money is, if you're a nervous person and you're an anxious person right now about money, you making more money is probably not going to solve that, right? We're going to have to get to the root of the issue. What is causing the worry? What would help you emotionally? And then two, that having all this money is not going to make you happy. I know a lot of people who are financially free, never have to worry about money ever again in their life, who are completely unhappy, right? Money doesn't make you happy. And another thing is freedom doesn't make you happy. A lot of people, their biggest goal is, they say, okay, I don't care about the money. I care about the freedom. I want to be free one day, free from a job. And that won't make you happy either. And I'll just go ahead and give people the blueprint. If you want to be happy in life, you need to focus on these four things: your relationships. Who do you want to pour into? What relationships do you want to nurture? Who are the people you want to love? And then how do you build those relationships? Two is contribution. How are you giving to people who are giving to other people? How are you helping people, whether that is through, volunteering, whether that's through mentorship, whether that's through activism? How are you contributing to a cause beyond yourself? Three is your health. If you don't have health, none of that other stuff matters. And then four is, I got to think what I said. And then four is growth, personal growth, right? So you have to make sure that you're not getting stagnant in life. So you have to be getting better at something. And then a bonus thing, I'm a really spiritual person, is your relationship with God. If you are a person of faith, those five things, that's going to make you happy more than any money can do. I know people who are in terrible financial shape who have more happiness than all of us. And I know people who never have to worry about money again who are miserable. So that's the quick blueprint right there.
So in working with these wealthy clients, can you tell us what lessons did you take from serving them?
I would say the biggest lesson, and this kind of reaffirmed what I was already seeing beforehand, but one of the big things to me was, say this in a nice way, one of the biggest things to me is a lot of people, they're in their position and they're not that talented. Now, my clients, this is none of y'all. This is none of y'all. All y'all are extremely talented. There's a lot of people who are extremely wealthy. We see is very, very, very successful, and they're not that talented. They're not that smart. They just have phenomenal upbringings, right? You can say their parents are phenomenal and smart or whatever, but I see a really common pipeline of person had great parents. They went to great schools, had great tutors, got into great colleges, and they graduated with no debt, and they had connections from either their parents, their university, or their parents' friends, and they had a really big head start. You're starting with, for a lot of people, I think 200,000 is an income where you would say you made it. That's a lot easier if you're starting out of college at 100,000, right? It's a lot. That's really achievable versus you starting with $100,000 of debt. And that's not to shame anybody. You still have to make the most of your opportunities. You still have to apply yourself. But that's to say, man, it's so much stuff in this wealth building journey that we don't control, right? We don't control what parents we have. We don't control what private schools we go to. Our parents control that. We don't control what relationships and connections we have after college. To a certain extent, we do, but some stuff is just given to us. And then there's some stuff that's just dumb luck. Like some people, they buy their first house and it shoots up in price $100,000, and they go start a business with that $100,000, right? That's not that much skill. That is a lot of things beyond your control. So I already kind of had an inkling of that beforehand, but it really hammered that point home. And in just various, interacting with corporate people, being in some corporate settings, I think people just automatically assume that just because someone is successful, that they are competent, and that's just not the case at all. A lot of people are successful despite their level of competence. But what that means for us, for the listeners, what you can take with that is, one, have empathy for people. If someone is not where you are in life, they probably didn't have the opportunities you had. There's a lot of people who could do more with the same circumstances that you had. There's a lot of people, they would be Bezos by now if they had my parents and and the support that I had. But then two is, all right, if you're not there yet, it's okay. A lot of people are comparing themselves and they're not even comparing apples to apples, right? You're saying, okay, I'm not successful because this person who I'm looking at, they're making $300,000 and I'm making $50,000, right? But you don't know what head starts and advantages they had, right? I met a extremely successful, extremely great brother. He's a financial advisor over at Edward Jones. And, I look up to this guy and he said, one day I hope I'm successful. And I'm looking at him and I knew a lot of things in this guy's background, some of the stuff that he went through growing up in the hood. Like, man, if I was in your circumstances, I wouldn't be worried about no school. I wouldn't be graduating. I might not be alive. So, we're comparing ourselves to people who, and I say all that to say is he didn't see himself as successful, way more successful than me. But he's, it's other people who have more success. But I'm like, man, they couldn't. These people you're comparing themselves to, if you're a football fan, man, give some of these people the talent that I don't want to start no argument, but give some of these other quarterbacks the talent that Jalen Hurts got, and they'll probably win a Super Bowl too.
Ooh, boys, we have to talk about that up there.
Yeah, give some guys these same environments and circumstances, and they'll probably make something happen too. So stay grounded in it. That's the takeaway.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, why did you decide to shift from to shift your focus to financial literacy for the everyday people?
Yeah. So just to add a little color for the audience, is I worked on that team that was working with very wealthy clients, and then as of July, I switched my focus to. Oh, Charles, you still there?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, my computer went to sleep on me. But I shifted my focus on working on my own price where I can take on my own clientele. And I work with a lot of wealthy clients still, but I'm also doing. I'll have a conversation with anyone now, and I'm also starting to do pro bono work too. So people who can't afford a financial advisor, they can't pay me a dime. I want to do more and more work with them as well. But the big thing was, as good as the work that I was doing, I was getting satisfaction in the fact that I got to solve a lot of complex problems. So I'm a person who's driven by that, being the best, not necessarily having the most money, but being the best financial advisor, knowing the most that I possibly can. And that was challenging me when I was working with those wealthy clients. But the one thing that I was missing was impact, because a lot of those guys, I was doing great work. I was doing phenomenal work. But, there's a lot of situations where, hey, you can take an advisor fresh out of college and they wouldn't mess this up, right? Because if you got X amount of dollars, right, right, it's only so many ways you can spend it. These guys weren't in danger of running out. So I didn't feel like I had the impact. It's, in a sense, you was kind of helping rich people get richer, which I'm all for. But I also want to be able to give back to others. Everything doesn't have to be charity. Everything doesn't have to be giving back. We need to, business is business, and then you can also give outside of your business. But I wanted to combine that just a little bit and do something that gave me the freedom to, if I wanted to work with somebody pro bono, I could. Plus, selfishly, I wanted to build my own as opposed to, helping another advisor build theirs. Even if it was really rewarding and challenging work, I thought it just could be more rewarding.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us, how do you balance the technical knowledge with the practical advice?
Oh, that's now you're asking the real questions. You're asking the real questions now. So I will say that is beyond any of the designations or the credentials. That is the level of expertise that I'm the most proud of and had to work at the most, right? It's the most challenging part of being a financial advisor, because when I first started, man, I want to teach you everything that I knew, right? If I learned about Roth, you would learn about Roth. If I learned about a mega backdoor Roth, you had to learn about a mega backdoor Roth this day, and you meaning the client. But I really had to take a step back and say, okay, what's in the best interest of the person I'm speaking to, right? If I bombard them with all this information, they don't do anything, how does that help them? So I had to step back and start with begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey would say. I had to begin with the end in mind. Okay, this client is sitting here. All right, let's find out what their goals are, what they want their mission to be. What do they want their future to be? What do they want? How do they want to enjoy their life? What are their goals? And then what is the information that I need to teach them in order to get them there? So for a really, and that can be different for different clients. For someone who is really financially savvy, all right, that might be a lot of information, because the more information I give them, the more they trust my advice, right? But for other people, there's people who saying, "Hey, I trust you. Just tell me what to do, and I'll do it." For them, I don't need to teach them, every little in and out of the bond market for them to improve their financial future. And so it's pulling back and doing what's in their best interest. Even though education is noble, it might not always be serving the client the best. So it's really, long story short, answer your question, it's really pulling back what's the goal, and then what technical knowledge is needed to get them to their goal.
Let's transition over to your work as a financial advisor. Can you tell us what makes IRC Wealth unique in its approach to advising clients?
Man, it's funny because I just talked about education, but theirs is on paper, as far as technically speaking, theirs is they are education first. And they are also, we're also a company where we will have a conversation with you regardless of who you are. Now, you might not be the best fit for, to pay us in a client advising relationship, right? Whether you can't afford it or we're not the best person for your situation. But if you're someone who wants to, improve your financial situation, we will have that conversation with you, and we will at least give you steps on how to get there, right? What's the next best steps you can do? So that openness to help anyone, that's something that I really respect. And then that's something that we offer. Even in the past, the advisors who I worked with the most were those advisors, or excuse me, not the advisors who I worked with the most, but the advisors who I looked up to the most. They would treat someone who was making $30,000, a single mom making $30,000, the same as a business owner who was making $300,000. That's something that I really respected and knew that was something that I wanted in my career. That's something that we offer at IRC. And then another thing is we have a really diverse team. We have our team is me, one other guy, and then the rest of us on a team of 10 are women, all different races. And so that is something that's really unique for our industry, because most firms are 100%, or if not 100%, 95% white male dominated. And if you have women there, they're probably in more of the service and roles as opposed to the leadership role. So I think the future of the finance industry is diversity. And you have all this nonsense about DEI. DEI is just good business, right? If you're in Atlanta and your clientele is diverse, your people should be diverse, right? And DEI is not about giving undeserving people a chance. It's about branching out and making sure that you're including and bringing Black people and other minorities to the table in the first place. So I don't need to get into DEI, right? We all on the same page on that. It just be on my heart.
Well, I want to say this, for both you and your firm, kudos for you guys sticking with the equity and inclusion, because as you say, that does matter.
Absolutely.
And truth be told, it's like, some people totally misclassify what that means, but I'm happy for you guys that you guys are actually doing that, and it really makes a difference.
Absolutely.
How do you help creative agency owners plan for retirement?
So that is, and just to add color, that is my real specialty, working with creative agency owners. So think someone who owns a design agency or marketing agency. I'll put PR firms in that category, but essentially creatives who own a business and who are thinking about winding down. And for me, it's a couple of areas. One is where are we trying to get to? So for one, what lifestyle do we want to have when you stop working? And that is really crucial, because a lot of people, they have as I alluded to earlier, they have the means to retire, but if they retire right now, they're going to be miserable, right? Because they're retiring away from something, they're not retiring to something. So how do we build a future, a next chapter that really excites you, that you're really going to enjoy? Because if you're going to retire and be more miserable, you might as well keep working, right? You might as well keep working until they drag you out that out that office. So that is always step one. How do we design a life that's really going to excite you? And then step two is how do we put numbers to that, right? That lifestyle that you want, how much do you need to save up? And then since they own firms, are probably a combination is going to come from their investments, and a combination is going to come from the value of their business. So once we understand the life that we want, how much it's going to cost to fund that life. Two is, all right, you have this machine that is generating income, which is your company, your business. All right, how do we take that machine and turn that into a nest egg? How do we turn that into your retirement income? Because right now it's just a business. You can't retire on a business. I mean, hypothetically you can, but you can't go pay your AARP dues with your business, right? You can't tell them you're the owner of the business. They just give you stuff. Right. So there's two ways to do that. Two ways to take your business and turn that into some retirement income. You can either take the income from your business, a portion of your business before you stop working, and invest those. It's in a sense diversifying. So your business makes some profits. Let's take some of those profits and let's invest those. Right. So you have some money once you stop working. And then the two is going to be maximizing the value of their business. So a lot of people, especially, I say people in general, but people in service industries, there's a lot of reasons that they don't get the best value on their businesses. And there's some things that you can do to maximize that value and make it more appealing to buyers. So hopefully between the combination of the profits that you're taking and investing and the money that you get from your business, and not everyone sells their business. Some people just stop working, but the combination of those two should add up to that number that we got from step two.
So, what challenges do entrepreneurs face when planning transitions?
Man, that's a good question. I think the biggest one is direction. Most entrepreneurs, a big sense of their self-worth and their identity comes from their business. So I think when anyone retires, an employee or a teacher, anyone retires, there's this risk that they're going to lose a sense of themselves and feel directionless in retirement. But I think that's even more for entrepreneurs because you built your baby and now you're leaving your baby. So these people, most entrepreneurs, most agency owners, when they stop working, there's this huge void. So you have to fill that void with something. So that's why I say, retiring to something and not away from something. So even if, your agency or your business is draining you, I don't think just to get away from your business is a good reason to retire. Right. But if, let's say, all right, I don't have, I have a bunch of my self-worth and my identity tied to being an entrepreneur or being a business owner. All right, well, now in this next chapter, I'm going to make a part of my identity being a coach, right? Or being a mentor, or I'm going to be philanthropic or charitable. Right now you have, for one, you replace that void that's going to be there. So that you're losing a piece of that self-identity as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and you're replacing it with something, mentor, someone charitable, father, whatever the case may be. Now that replaces that void and that gives you meaning on the other side of your business. So I think that's challenge one. And then challenge two is on the technical side, but is how do we take this thriving, this successful business and turn it into a nest egg? Right. Most people, they have their business. And if they don't have anything outside of their business, they're not diversified. And if something happens to their market or their business, they're kind of screwed. Right. And I work with creatives. So, if something happens in the AI world and turns their business upside down, well, if you were relying on selling your business for 10 million and retiring off of that, and now your business is worth 1 million, right? You're in trouble. And for entrepreneurs, that's a really hard mental thing to do of, all right, how do I take some chips off the table while my business is making a whole bunch of money and investing in things that aren't my business? So those are, on the technical side and on the emotional side.
So, can you tell us, how do you design financial plans that align with personal values?
See, now we asking the good questions. Man, it is doing everything. For one, it's doing a really good job on the front end of what does life design look like, right? What does that next chapter look like? And you can't do that until you really ask about what people's values are. And there's questions that you ask to get to the bottom of that. I love asking people, if you were completely financial free right now, what would you do differently? Right? What are the things that keep you up at night? So those kind of get you to the values, and through asking a lot of those qualitative questions, what's important to them, you kind of find out, okay, what is the under freedom, under, I want to go take trips on the beach, under saying I want to provide for my family. What's important to that person? Okay, now we know that your family is important. Now that we know giving your kids a head start is important. Great. Now we can work with that. All right, now let's add some color to that. How do you want your typical Mondays to go? How do you want your typical Tuesdays to go? What are you going to be doing in your free time? Are you going to be pursuing some creative outlets like photography and music and things like that? And so once we have that, that's the hard part. Putting the numbers to it is pretty easy. You make some estimates. If you have some experience in the business, you kind of know how much things will typically cost, and you make some assumptions, and you throw in, okay, your healthcare and your Medicare is going to be this, until you create some numbers behind it in the plan. But it's up to that good job you did on the front end of figuring out what's important to that person to give those numbers colors. Because if I just build this fancy plan that just has, hey, you need to save X amount of dollars, you need to put this here, put this into your Roth, this into your 401k, that's great. And some people will move on that. But if I say, hey, in order to get this future that you want, the quickest way to do that is if you put this money here, this is the money that's going to turn into this trip. This is the money that's going to turn into this hobby. This is going to be your philanthropic bucket here. That's going to be a lot impactful. And when someone has to make those hard decisions on, man, I really don't want to pull this money away from my business. I really want to spend it, or I really want to put it back into the business, right? If they start thinking of, okay, well, this is going to help me achieve that future that I just dreamed up, that's what's going to help people actually take those actions.
Mhm. So before I transition to another segment, I just want you to do one final thing here, as these sections, as you being a financial planner and advisor.
Mm-hmm.
In wrapping those up, what are some of the things that you recommend that the everyday person that wants to seek assistance, like what you offer, the services that you offer? What are some of the things that they should pre-plan for in order to make that meeting happen with you?
I would just ask around. There's a lot of people who say, well, you should do this, and you should go look at their Google reviews, and you should do this. I'm gonna be honest, there's no Google review that's going to make me trust you with my money. But if my best friend tells me that, hey, they trust this person, then I will trust them. Or if I've got a bunch of free nuggets of financial advice from this person's already helped me for free, added value into my life, whether they write or they make videos, and they've increased my financial literacy. Okay, now I trust this person. So I would start, if you don't know financial advisors now, I would ask around, ask some of the most successful people who they work with, and then find out how they are paid, find out their fee structure. And that's going to sound like Spanish to most people, but somewhere on their page they should have something that says fees, and if they don't, you need to ask them in their first meeting. So typically a person is paid either by commissions or by a fee. And with commissions is, okay, if they sell this particular product, they get paid X amount. So a person may sell you some life insurance and they get paid by the company for that. Or the person may sell a particular mutual fund and the mutual fund pays them for that, right? Or fees. So you pay $5,000 to get a financial plan done, or you pay $10,000 to get a financial plan done. Or if you invest $1 million with me, I take 1% of that per year. Right. So figure out what the fees. I don't think any one of those are better than the other, but I think you should at least be aware of that, because it's going to kind of tell you their bias. I think every financial advisor whether they want to admit it or not, has some sort of bias, right? If someone has commission, if someone gets commission for a product, obviously they're going to be more biased to recommend that product. Now, most financial advisors are ethical though. So, if they're recommending it, most financial advisors, especially ones that I know, they're recommended because they believe it's going to be best for you. But just be aware of their bias. If someone is getting a percentage of your assets, if you invest $1 million with them, they get 1%, then they're going to be biased to recommending that you put more money with them, right? So if you ask them, hey, should I take $10,000 from my investment account to go pay off my mortgage? Regardless if it's best or not, they're going to have some kind of incentive to say, no, you need to keep it here, right? Now, it might be the best decision for you to keep it there, but just be aware of the bias. But I would ask around. If you had a restaurant recommendation, you might get on Google, but this is a little bit more more delicate than that. And I will say, as many financial advisors as there are, I think some financial advisors are better than other. I will say there's a lot of financial advisors I don't agree with. I can't really name people who have worked with a financial advisor and are worse off than when they started. I've heard of those stories. I know it exists, but me personally, I can't name a situation where someone worked with someone and they're worse off. Now, I've gotten clients because, their financial advisor didn't recommend them the best thing possible, or, they're not the best experts in their particular niche. But I haven't heard of too many situations where someone invests with someone or someone takes someone financial advice and they're objectively worse. So that should give someone let them breathe in, breathe out a little bit.
So we also, when I spoke to you before the show, we talked about Black History. We do Black History 365.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked you, who's the most influential person in your life and career? And you told me that was Assata Shakur.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us what was the first moment you encountered Assata Shakur's story, and why did it leave such a lasting impression on you?
I actually do not know the first time I heard her story. I know it was in college, and I can't remember why. I believe she may have been on the documentary. There was a Netflix documentary called, what was it called? 13th, I believe. Yeah, named after the 13th Amendment. 13th was a documentary, but it was about the prison industrial complex. But I could be wrong. But essentially, I know she's not the most, famous person in Black history, but aside, and this will be a little controversial. I'm not condoning every single thing she stood for. Let me just throw that out there, because not everyone's gonna like this. I think our audience would, but I don't think everyone's gonna like that. But she was a member, activist of the Black Panther Party, and she eventually left the Black Panther Party to join the BLA, the Black Liberation Army. I'm probably oversimplifying it, but they were a little bit more militant, kind of offshoot of the Black Panther Party. And she was an activist for years. She was very against police brutality, systemic racism, all the way back in the 70s. Now, this was in the time period where they were just killing Black Panther members. That's just what was happening. And, I'm not going to, there was some, immoral things done that she admitted to for moral reasons, right? So there might have been, not everything I'm condoning is what I'm saying. But she was a target from the FBI and from the police. And she got a bunch of different charges, nothing stick. And then all of a sudden she's driving home from, I don't even know where she was driving from, but with other members of the Black Liberation Army, and they get pulled over by police. Is dispute on what happened. What I personally believe happened is the police shot at them first and killed a couple of guys who she was with, and she got killed too, and the police got killed in all of the crossfire. And she ends up finally gets convicted. I would say wrongfully convicted. It's up for debate if it was wrongfully convicted or not. But I personally believe the police started shooting first. And so she gets sentenced, I think, to life or something like that in prison in, I think, 73. And by 79, the Black Liberation Army, they broke her out of there. And she was in Cuba from 79 or 80 until she passed away a couple of months ago. But so I love her story. I've always been drawn to her story. She's actually Tupac Shakur's step aunt or godmother, something like that. But she was close to Tupac Shakur, and he mentions her in his talks, and I think she's in his music as well. But what really drew me to her was we say we would do X, Y, and Z if we was in this situation. And we say I hate the phrase "I'm not my ancestor." I hate that. I hate that because I just hate it because we had some ancestors who had that dog in them, who wanted to play and wasn't nobody to play with, and we had ancestors who would die about it, and so that inspires me, and especially because I think in America they try to wash out a lot of Black history for a purpose, right? It's not just teaching it, but it's teaching a whitewashed version of it. No pun intended, but a whitewashed version of it where it's less less militant and everybody is a pacifist. Like even Martin Luther King, they don't teach in them last few years. Martin Luther King kept that thing on him, right? And Martin Luther King, everybody's anti-socialism. He sounded really socialist in them latter years if you read his stuff. But they want to get rid of that part of history, and I'm not even condoning socialism, militantism, any of that stuff, but it's a part of our history, right? People felt so strongly about everything from slavery to Reconstruction to Jim Crow that they were willing to die about it. And it was so interesting. She ended up getting shot before this police shootout. She ended up getting shot in the stomach. I think for a robbery, to be honest. I could be wrong, but I think she might have been robbing somebody or something like that. I apologize if I'm getting that wrong, guys. But she said that one of the best things to happen to her was the fact that she got shot because she no longer feared getting shot. Right. So that level of I'm committed to this. I'm committed to the struggle. And even her name Asada means, I believe, woman of the struggle. And that's not her real name. She changed her name to Asada Shakur. And so even that is, she was struggling about activism, and whether you want to, I don't condone all her methods. I'm more pacifist myself personally. But I think it takes everyone in order to create change. I think we're fighting something that's invisible, that is definitely being demonized. We're people who are pointing out that systemic racism exists right now. We're being demonized from the White House, right? From the White House down. So we're fighting a really hard fight right now. And, I would love if everybody took it from people from different points of thinking. We took the best of each one of those crowds and all worked towards a common goal, right? I am, me personally, I guess I'm gonna get into my politics. I fall more on the moderate left. But I think it takes me. I think it takes a socialist, someone really, really progressive. I think it takes all of us working towards that common goal. And she was alive during MLK's time, but it took not just your MLK and your Malcolm X's and your Rosa Parks. It also takes people who are willing to hit that pavement with that thing on them to make sure that the police wasn't harassing these communities.
So, can you tell us, how has Asata Shakur's resilience and activism shaped the way you approach your own career in public life?
Man, I would definitely say it's more challenged me than anything, because I always have to start periodically and say, okay, but would I be willing to die for this? Right now, do I need to die for finance? No, I don't think so. But I'm a man of faith. Would I be willing to die for my faith? I feel that confident. If I saw a brother on the street being attacked by police, would I be willing to risk my own safety and my own livelihood? And honestly, if I genuinely give thought to that, honestly, the answer is no. But now I self-assess, okay, why is that? Why do I not feel that passionate about injustice being done? Why don't I feel that much compassion for a human being, period, but somebody who looks like me? So it's more challenging than anything.
So, Asata often spoke about struggles as a collective responsibility.
Hmm.
How has that philosophy influenced the way you lead and collaborate?
Man, that's awesome. So this is I can't give all of this to Asada. So I'm part of a church that is really socially focused. I think that if you claim that you're going to be a Christian, you have to care about social justice because Jesus did, right? So I can't say this is all on Asada, but if if we are who we claim we are, if we say we're about Black people, if we say that we are Christian, then we need to care about other people. Now that can look different to different people. For some people, that can be grassroots. For some people, that can be being extremely generous, right? Radical generosity. People giving 90% of their income. That can just look really really different. But how does that manifest itself? And then for my Christians out there, you know, everybody want to say, everybody say Jesus was a nice guy and all this stuff, but want to skip over the hard teachings he taught. He taught that, hey, on Judgment Day, we gonna separate people, and the people who they gave food to the hungry, they gave water to the thirsty, they visited people in prison, they were good to the strangers, read immigrants, they were nice to the immigrants. Y'all going to heaven, and the people who ignored the people who were hungry, who ignored the immigrants, who ignored the people who were in prison, y'all going to hell. So hey, if we Christian, that's from the Bible. That is Matthew 25. If it's not 25, it's 26. So hey, don't come at me, come at Jesus. He said that. So so I think it takes all of us to have a heart to care about something beyond us. It's easy for life to get in the way, for us to worry about our own struggles. But if we say we are for the promotion of Black people, what does that look like? Right? What are we doing? Are we going out of our way? And then do we even care about people? If you see a Black brother on the street asking for money, all right, maybe you don't have $5 on you, but do you actually care about that brother? Do you care about his flourishing?
Final question for you. Can you share a moment in your life when Asata's writings or speeches directly shifted your perspective or decision making?
Yeah, I would I touched on this a little bit, and I don't think it was one writing or anything, but it's just her story in general. But I had a really apathetic view to like the Black struggle and getting some form of reconciliation of Black people. And this came from college. So the college I went to, Georgia Southern, it was extremely racist. And at first, you want to make all this change, and I get involved with different groups, and in student government, I'm making different change, inclusion, talking about it. But then you just get beat up one day. It would be stupid stuff. So there was a Confederate flag everywhere there. They, you make progress one area, and they create a bar called Plantation Room the next day. And you're walking down the street, you hit an N word from somebody in a F-150 zooming by the next day. And then you just get tired of it. So I told myself, man, I don't care about none of this. I'm moving away from this hillbilly town, and I'm moving to Atlanta where some enlightened people are at. Right. But that was being apathetic to the people who they don't have the means to leave that area. Statesboro, one of the things I hated the most about it is you could literally see the redlining. You could see where the Black people had to live at because it was run down, and you could see these big estates right across the street from it. And so I had to get over my own apathy and saying, well, look, I can't change that. That's where it came from. The apathy came from feeling like I can't change this. I can't make this difference. I tried, it's not going anywhere. Right. But people did a lot more than me, and not just Asada, but her specifically. They did a lot more fighting than me for me to give up in 4 years because they were too mean to me.
So, in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement that you have for our audience? Tell them how they can connect with you on social media. Have them visit your websites. Give them the web addresses. All of those good things, if you will, please.
Absolutely. Man, word of advice. You are hearing this directly from a financial advisor. Money will not make you happy, right? I want you to be wealthy. I want you to be financially free, but money will not make you happy. And that is going to feel bad for some people because you're striving for this. You might have committed your whole career to that, but it's not going to change. You're going to get that money, or you don't get that money and you're disappointed, or you're going to get that money and it's going to feel amazing for, look, if your goal is small, it might feel amazing for a week. If your goal is really big, it might feel great for 5 months, right? You might become a millionaire, a billionaire. That might feel great for 5 years, 10 years, right? But eventually that's going to wear off. And what you're going to be left with is what's on the inside, your emotional health, your mental health, your self-worth. And so the good thing about that is you can work on those things right now. You don't have to wait until you're financially free to be in good health, to take care of your emotional health, to take care of your mental health. Do that right now, because money is not going to put a band-aid on any of that stuff. So that's what I will leave you all with. If you want to get in contact with me, if anyone watching this show text the number, or text black and white to this number, 404-906-9431. That'll be the easiest way to get in contact with me. Black and white to 404-906-9431. I mean, you can text me anything, I'll respond, but that'll show me that you're a member of this show. And we'll get on a call together, and we'll just see what's on your mind, and we'll point you in the right direction. That's the easiest way. If you want to connect with me, the social media I'm on almost exclusively is LinkedIn. So that's linkedin.com/IN/Jerry Jones CFP. You think I need to say that again?
You can.
So LinkedIn.com/IN/JerryJonesCFP. So that's the best way to get in contact with me. Our website is ircwealth.com. But I would get in personal contact with me because there's other advisors at IRC Wealth. So LinkedIn, text me will be the easiest way. And we will get you pointed in the right direction.
Well, I want to thank you for an extraordinary show, and I appreciate you for taking the time to be here with us and to share this knowledge with us, because, again, it's important, because knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
And I think servicing the communities means more than anything.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be a part of this, and I think you're doing amazing things with the podcast, the magazine. I support the movement, man.
I definitely appreciate that, and we definitely got to have you back on the show.
Sounds good. I love it.
For those of you that are watching on all of our channels that we are streaming, I appreciate your support. For those of you in particular that are on the YouTube channels, I would appreciate your support if you would go to those channels and please subscribe and enable all the notifications. Therefore, you will be able to get all the shows live, as well as go back and watch all of the great shows that are knowledgeable, to give you that knowledge that you're seeking to learn some things from. Also, I would appreciate if you guys would actually join our community, as well as join and subscribe to our magazine, because, again, it displays all of the Black excellencies that we have, that we're displaying, which are all of the wonderful interviews and the wonderful guests that come to our show each and every month. And you will get the opportunity to not only see those shows again, but you also get to learn a whole lot more about the guests, and you get to learn the things that they do and how they could possibly help you. I want to thank you again, Jerry, for being here, because again, this was a wonderful show. I appreciate everybody that was watching tonight, and I ask if you all will please come back and join us again tomorrow night, as we have another episode of American Black and White, where we will continue to color conversations on the canvas of America. I'm your host, Charles King. You all have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow night.